Okay, here we go. Now we're going to put in the EO. The child was happy, relaxed, and engaged for at least 5 minutes. We would not put it in going forward unless the child was definitely happy, relaxed, and engaged for at least 5 minutes. When they're happy, relaxed, and engaged for 5 minutes, we're going to put in the establishing operation. Putting in the establishing operation, we talk about it nowadays in terms of progressing the EO because there's several steps. We're going to get into detail later on it. You're simply going to see Ditu's going to first remove his toys. Second, ask him to do his work. Simultaneously, he's going to kind of withdraw their attention. If the child engaged in a mand, he obviously wouldn't honor it. So the EO is just the opposite of reinforcement. And so let's see it. By the way, as soon as problem behavior happens, he's going to reinforce it. To be very obvious, he is not going to wait for aggression. He's going to be poised to reinforce any response that was reported to co-occur with aggression. So here we go.
Oh no. Alright, I actually need this. I need you to go over there and clean up those blocks, okay?
Okay.
Alright, stop cleaning. I need you to watch. Go play on the iPad.
No.
Go play on the iPad by yourself.
No.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did you want to play with these toys? Oh, sure. We can do that.
Yes, we give in. We cave. Precisely.
He
He did fall down. But you know what? We're done with these toys. I need you to go play with the iPad over there, okay? Oh, I'm sorry. Did you want to keep playing with these toys?
Yeah.
Sure. Here you go. Here. All right. Yay!
Now that's an older video. It still looks a little weird, so let me walk through with you. We're trying to teach the child that their behavior has power. Remember that. We're empowering them. To do that safely, it is very important to provide all possible reinforcers immediately following the first instance of problem behavior. If you want to do a low inference analysis, you want to know why aggression is occurring, so you're going to wait for aggression, you are officially a dangerous behavior analyst to me. If the child has severe self-injury and you're going to do a functional analysis and you're not going to be satisfied until they engage in SIB because you don't want to make the leap, the inferential leap, so you're going to wait till they engage in SIB before you provide reinforcement, you are dangerous. You are officially a dangerous professional. I don't know any other way. Say it differently every time to alert people to the fact that I don't think it's defensible any longer to put a child in a room and evoke severe forms of self-injury and aggression, provide partial reinforcements to satisfy our curiosity about the function when we don't have a single study showing that that leads to a socially meaningful outcome. Now, when I was editor of job, I couldn't say that because I'm representing a journal. And I was a professor at Western New England, I was representing an academic program. Well, right now I'm not representing either. And so that's why I'm talking like this. I don't think it's defensible. It's very important that at the first sign of problem behavior, you reinforce it. I need to make this very clear why. And I'm going to go back to it several times today and tomorrow. When a child engages in the first response, by the way, the first time we put an EO in, we can't predict the first response. Sometimes it's this. I'm not saying it's a problem to get SIB and aggression. I'm saying it's a problem to engineer that to happen. The first response might be this. The second response might be this. I can pretty much guarantee if you do this the way we talk about today, the third response will always be mild, non-dangerous. It always shapes down in intensity when you provide all the reinforcers immediately. I can say all the time because we have studies. In fact, one out in Java last year, 10 consecutive participants. It shapes down with immediate provision of all reinforcers for the earliest member of the response class. What happens if you want to see SIB is that to get to SIB, especially for younger learners, they're going to go through an escalation chain. They're going to whine, they're going to stomp, they're going to knuckle bite. And then eventually, they'll engage in SIB. However, when they're engaging in SIB or aggression, they might have crossed what we call the emotional borderlands. That behavior is no longer an operant. It's an operant when they go like this. We know that because it's wildly sensitive to its consequences. We provide the reinforcers and it stops, just like it did for that boy. But as the behavior escalates, it crosses this imaginary boundary, you might call emotional, and now it's not just an operant. And please know, it's not a respondent. That's too simple. They're not respondents. Respondents are a different beast. They're emotional behavior. Skinner talked about them way back then, but we don't study them because they're hard to study. When a child is emotional, at that point, it's a true meltdown. The distinction between a tantrum and a meltdown some people make. When they're in a meltdown, you can provide all their reinforcers. It's still going to carry on. Think about it like this. Does anyone have a baby right now, like in your pocket? Could you pull them out? Okay. Anyway, some of you have little babies in your house. My wife is a behavior analyst. She does some baby research. She's got a study out in Java recently where she looks at the ability of people to discriminate cries of their baby. And I don't know the exact number, but let's say about half of new mothers, not fathers, we're knuckleheads, but the mothers can detect the cry of their baby, that this is the I need to eat cry, this is the I need to sleep cry, this is I need some warmth, I need to be held cry. And so when she was doing that study, I was thinking back to when I was the dad of these little babies. And when they, Rachel would try to point out what the cry was. I'd be like, yeah, it all sounds the same to me, but I trust you. And so when there was the eat cry, she would take the baby, put it to her chest, and that was that. No more crying, and the baby would eat. Now, when she wasn't around, she was teaching, and my babies would cry. What would I have to do? Can I just go like this? They'd have a mouthful of hair. No muscle, just skin and hair. Really gross. Did I gross you out right there? It's really gross, right? Pretty gross. So what do I have to do? I have to get the powder, put it in the water, shaky, shaky, put it in the heater, tap, tap, tap. Oh, damn, too hot. Do it again. By the time I get it to my son and I go to put it in his mouth, ripping the nipple off, there's no way he's going to take that bottle at that point because that cry is no longer an operant. It's emotional. The reinforcer does not satisfy any longer. That same stuff has been happening in these low inference standard analyses for quite some time. And we celebrate it. Oh, look at that differentiation, 20 a minute. 20 a minute is not to be celebrated. Just enough behavior is to be celebrated. That's control. When it's beyond just enough, it's variance unaccounted for. Unimpressive explosions of behavior that we actually don't understand, nor can we control. As behavior analysts, I'm sorry it's an ugly word, we're supposed to control behavior. He or she who can turn it on and off, the quickest and the safest wins. I think that's what we're about. Not just turning it on and letting the shit show happen. And the shit show happens when we're slow to reinforce, when we wait to reinforce until we get the target dangerous behavior, and when we reinforce incompletely. Yeah, you can have a break to nothing. You have kids sitting on the break going, where's that iPad that was just in here in my tangible condition? And as the EO continues to percolate, they continue to escalate. Okay, so you saw it. Our mission is to turn on and off behavior. And how we engineer that is important. Immediate provision of all suspected reinforcers for the earliest member of the response class. We used to do an analysis like this. Each data point represented a 5-minute session. These averaged about 25 minutes. Behavior was off while we provided all the reinforcers. Then we turned it on. There was 30 seconds of reinforcement. Then we'd put the EO in again. That's what yields the rate of about 1.2 a minute, which means there's not explosive episodes of behavior. It's tightly controlled. Back to control for 5 minutes, and then we repeat the test. This is lovely. But we don't do it this way anymore because we want to make it more performance-based, and I'll talk about those details later. Let's look at another client. This is a 11-year-old boy at the time. He had very severe self-injury and aggression. He used to bang his head off tables pretty hard against walls. He had 2 staff to 1, but usually there was 2.5, someone lurking, ready for when the shoe was about to drop. He was a boy that was very difficult to teach. People didn't know if he was a bright guy or not a bright guy at this point. They just knew he couldn't be taught, and when you tried to teach him, he engaged in these severe behaviors that required restraint. He was on his 3rd school in New England. There's very good schools for kids with autism in New England, but yet he was moving through them because the schools were challenged with teaching him. This is the teacher in the control session. She's going to provide access to all his reinforcers. He's going to get escape from academic works, Being on the floor is a good signal of that, and she's going to not give instructions. These are all his tangibles. Notice our analyses are sloppy. If he's into musical books, we don't have a musical book in the analysis. We have 20 of them. If he doesn't like doing worksheets, we don't have a worksheet. We'll have 5 workbooks, 20 workbooks if you can do it. Put his whole IEP cart right into the room. So that's my favorite. I love the IEP cart. Yes, which ones? All of them. Which coloring books? All of them. Because what we're doing is we're creating a teaching context that we're going to live in for 25 to 30 teaching hours to develop all the skills. So we're not cheap at the front end. We just load it up with what we're going to need to do the process. He gets academic work. These are his tangibles. You're going to know she's going to engage in particular behaviors with him because she knows him. It shows the importance of why she needs to do it. She's going to make funny voices. She's going to respond to the way he pulls on her hands. That means turn the page. Notice also he's going to get what we label here, if you can read closely, it's called attention. It's a French version of attention that we're into now. I'm just kidding. That's a total joke. It's a misspelling. It's been misspelled now for 3 years, and I refuse to fix it because I think attention sounds great. I want some attention. Don't you? If I said, would you like some attention? You would say yes. You don't know what it is, but it sounds great. So he's just getting attention.
I was just going to ask, if a child has a preferred activity that you know takes a certain duration of time, do you guys ever extend your control condition? Like if they want to like switch out DVDs and watch specific parts of it?
Yes, it depends where we are in the process, but in the very beginning of the process, we put in the EOs somewhat gently at first. And so what that means is if a child's playing a video game, we might put the EO in a natural break in the action. If the reinforcer, again, is video games, I always go back to it. Often our reinforcement intervals last a long period of time. We've expanded our scope of competence to learners that have high IQs and have psychiatric conditions. And you can't go deliver 30 seconds of reinforcement to these folks. You see what I'm saying? And so you are spot on. And when we talk about the tactics today and especially tomorrow, we're going to talk about how you make those changes to accommodate different learner profiles. But a massive accommodation is in the duration of reinforcement, which is another way of saying, when do you put the EO in? Okay. Okay, here was what it looks like.
It's time to play ball. The rocks bat first. He waits for his turn. The batter hits the ball.
Again, what are we doing at first? Our first priority, make sure they want to stay in the space. That's the data. The first bit of data we're collecting is, do they want us to hang out? Do they want to stay here? Check. Second, are they HRE? The child should look joyful, happy, completely unthreatened. I want to make something painfully obvious. It is not impressive to turn on problem behavior when a child's already agitated. Completely unimpressive to take a child who's fully irritable and make them hit themselves or hit others or throw toys or flip a table. By contrast, it's quite impressive when you can have a child full of joy, flip that switch and go right to problem behavior, then flip that switch right back and go right back to happy, relaxed, and engaged. That's impressive, folks. I want you to be impressive. I don't want you to cheapen the process by waiting until the child's already irritable. Parents will try to do that, by the way. So if we collaborate with people, we try to get in front of these things. But parents love to, A, not give kids their meds the day we collaborate. It happens so often. We're like, please just give them their meds. I'm not psyched about the 7,000 psychotropics they're on, but don't change them for us. Parents like to say, well, here's how you can kind of needle them. Here's how you can get them. They might say, listen, today's going to be a good day. He slept 1 hour last night. Okay, that's not what we're doing here. I want the child, I hope they had a great meal, have all their meds, have slept through the night, and come into this room and have joy. That's what we want it to look like, televisable. Do you want to be known? Do we want to be known as the people associated with crying, fear, confusion, and distress? Or do we want to be known as the people associated with joy? Man, you got to get yourself a BCBA. I have never seen my child happier than when they're with the BCBA. Don't you want that to be our reputation? I do. And so this focus on HRE is terribly important, not just for each learner. I think it's important for how we teach people who we are and what we're associated with. So she does this for a time, 5 or so minutes. Now she's going to put the EO in. This teacher is scared. I always ask this question. I say, how confident are you you're going to be able to turn the problem behavior off with its reinforcement that you taught me about? She wasn't very confident. She was about a 6 on a scale of 1 to 10. I say, are you nervous? Yes, I'm very nervous. So I usually keep talking to make sure we're not leaving anything out. In that conversation, there's usually some engineering discussed. This teacher was really bright. What she came up with was, instead of doing the EO at the table of high expectations, she said, how about I just have him sit in a chair and I use one of these vinyl lap tables? Because he doesn't headbang the lap table, he usually throws it at me. So she's willing to take one for the team rather than let the boy take one. And I thought that was great. And so in that conversation about what are you afraid of, we re-engineered it to get even better safety. So you're going to see the EO. This is about the 5th EO in. It turns into like a business relationship. So for the first boy, I showed you the first 2, where there's a little bit of confusion and escalation. For this boy, this is 5 in, and you'll notice it just looks like a business relationship. We're going to have fun. I'm going to mess with you. Your behavior has power. Do it, and then we're going to go back to having fun. Let's go to work.
Okay. All right. Let's do some more handwriting. Sit back. Looks like you went your way.
If you have to escalate kids to the point they're having a meltdown to understand why they're engaging in problem behavior, you will only be able to do this at the neurobehavioral unit or Monroe-Meyer or some other fancy place. If we want the rest of our field to be analytic, we have to adopt tactics that allow for the analysis to happen in a very safe, somewhat benign way. You can do this in the middle of a public school classroom. Most of the time, people don't even know an analysis is happening if you don't have all the cameras and all the parents there, if you have the right tactics. Okay. This is an example with a boy. This boy's 9 years old. He's not on the spectrum. He engages in severe enough behavior where it's aggression. He also engages in some inappropriate sexual behavior with other adults in the classroom. He's learned basically if he touches people, I think he gets to get out of school. He also elopes and he runs from school. He's handled by the resource officers with great frequency. He's a pretty anxious guy. He's very good at math. He likes math. He's really good at video games. He's really social, but he struggles making friends. He struggles with reading and comprehension. He doesn't want to go to school. And when he gets there, it's very easy to set him off, and then he runs off or does some other sort of behavior. So he's in a free outpatient clinic where he comes in an hour a week. I want you to know this boy. By the way, I have consent for these videos. It's very hard to get consent for some of this stuff. Most parents don't want their kids trotted about. But the family's very happy with this outcome, and so they want people to know about it. Jeffrey is ground zero for what we call our enhanced choice model. He's the boy that taught us to open the door. He's the boy that taught us to have reflection periods, to talk about what we just did. Don't language about contingencies while you're experiencing them, but talk about them after. He's the boy that taught us about having a hangout context so he doesn't need to embarrass himself with a big old blow up when he feels threatened. So when I talk about the ECM model, no, it's this boy that taught us this. This was the control session first. Everything's lovely.
Cool, are we going again or what?
Yeah! Let me just play this minigame balloon break.
Sure thing.
It's like the most annoying one. Because, oh, I've never seen this background before. Can you just keep on clicking A for me?
Sure. Like fast?
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Thank you. You're going to get me a lot of points.
Oh, John.
So we cheat, we're following kids' lead. We'll cheat at video games, whatever we need, okay? So that's lovely. Everything looks great. Understand that he had a blow up in our process because we didn't do it right. We do it better now because of him. I'm not going to show you that right now. I'll show you that after lunch when we get to ECM. But even with the blow up, it shapes down. So within 15 minutes, this is what it looked like in the test.
Everybody, I don't want to do any of these things right now because we gotta get work done. So, Here you go. Oh, dude. Why didn't you just say so? Sure, we can keep playing. I'm sorry about that.
Are you doing this on purpose now?
Doing what on purpose?
Driving me nuts?
So what that boy said was, after reinforcement happens, Ditu gave some concessions. We call it giving concessions. When kids have language, it's very important to give some concessions, otherwise they might fill that dead space with another hit to remind you to not do that again. And so when he's filling the space with concessions, the boy says, are you doing this on purpose? Now Ditu was taken a little off guard with that, because please know, most of our clients do not talk about the experience, either because they can't or they won't. This boy says, are you doing this on purpose? And Ditu said, doing what on purpose? Because he was caught a little off guard. And the boy said, driving me nuts. Which I think is awesome. So as we've expanded this to other populations, we've learned how to do this better. And I'm going to foreshadow a tactic that has as great a power as does the open door analysis factor. And the factor is this. We do not ever put an EO in after 30 seconds anymore. Reinforcers, read every functional analysis study. The reinforcers are either 20 seconds or 30 seconds, usually 30 seconds. The amount of time the child's in reinforcement is dictated by the extent to which, the time with which it takes them to get back to happy, relaxed, and engaged. And if we don't do that, if we don't have a performance-based criterion, we systematically irritate kids. So by the 4th or 5th EO, language-able kids are saying, don't you stand up. I've had kids look through the one-way mirror at their parent, and this is exactly what he said. Mom, who is this guy? Why is he doing this? Do you see what I'm saying? If children can talk, they will tell us, we are weird. So we worked with children who can talk, and they told us in no uncertain terms that we are acting weird. And it took me more than one client to realize, you're right, dude, we are weird. Team, how can we be less weird? And that's how the process has evolved. That's what I mean by the children have taught us how to do the process. So again, a really important tactic is this. The next EO goes in after the child has been happy, relaxed, and engaged for at least 30 seconds. It's a subtle twist. It's not time-based, it's performance-based. It could be 30 seconds. It could be 20 minutes. Let the child dictate that. Safety's the priority. If the child's happy, relaxed, and engaged when you put the EO in, they're probably not going to go up to here. They're going to go to here. And they're going to stay out of that emotional borderlands, and the behavior is going to be inoperant, and it's going to be thus controllable. Okay? Okay. Why do the analysis? Why do the analysis? Some people say, well, just the interview looks so clear, let's just go right to it. Some of my colleagues in peer review processes are like, well, if it always works, why are you doing it? Just go from the interview to treatment. We do it because I need to teach the child the game. I need to teach them that their behavior has power. I need to teach them to want to come to therapy. It has to be experienced. It can't be talked about. You have to do it. I also am a scientist, even though I don't speak like it most of the time. I am a behavioral scientist, and I want to verify the thoughts generated in the interview. And I want to verify it by turning on behavior and turning off behavior. Before a teacher goes in a room, I want to make sure that she can be safe. How can I almost guarantee her safety? By doing the analysis and showing that I can turn it on and off, on and off. If you get scared, you know how to turn it off. We just proved that. Do you see what I mean? It's non-negotiable. We do the analysis because we need to teach the child, we need to teach ourselves that we can move forward with the skill-based treatment. This is going to be uncomfortable for many of you. Our mission is not to identify the function of problem behavior, and if that's your mission still, I would argue that you've already lost. That you are entangling that child with years of problem behavior as you parcel out the function. And the way to manage it after that will be partly function-based and partly BMOD, tamping down the fire with arbitrary rewards and punishers. You can be fancy and call them competing reinforcers because they followed a functional analysis. It's just BMOD, folks. I don't care what you name in it, it's BMOD. If your aim, by contrast, is to turn on behavior, to know that you have the passion, or you have identify the EOs, and turn off behavior, meaning you have the reinforcers, you have safety, then I think you're going to be close to success. I think that's going to move you towards success. Again, it's not an opinion, it's based on the literature. We have multiple replications showing socially meaningful outcomes when your mission is merely to turn on and off behavior. Our mission is to control behavior, not figure out which function it is. Okay. We've done this with babies, we've done this with toddlers, preschoolers, adults, in schools, in homes, in group homes. Child, IQ doesn't matter. High IQ, low IQ. Adults, it does matter. On the spectrum or have an intellectual impairment. The Rajaraman paper is a consecutive controlled case series. 50 consecutive clients with a differentiated analysis. The point is, that's why I'm very confident if we're going to spend time together, you can do a successful PFA. Don't worry if you don't think you're a master interviewer. Half the time I just give the interview to somebody, they type out or handwrite out their answers, and we design the analysis from it. If you're a good interviewer, that'll be great. You'll just establish rapport in the interview process. Some of you worry about turning on and off behavior, being analytic. Please know it's in your name as a professional, many of you. You're a board-certified behavior analyst. And I am 100% confident you can do this and you can do it safely. If I didn't believe that, I wouldn't stand up here and teach about these things. I want to make it clear what we mean by control, folks. In this analysis, is this a controlled analysis? Yes or no? Is this controlled? Now, if you think Java reviewers have good standards, and I do, then this has functional control in the sense that we have a functional relation. Behavior is off, behavior is on, behavior is off, behavior is on. You have control within a multi-element or a fast-acting reversal, whatever name you prefer. Also, please notice the y-axis, it's around 2 a minute. If you know these methods, the reinforcer back then was 30 seconds long. So doing the math, 2 minutes, that means it's quite efficient. This looks like pretty good control, but I want to make something evident. When I asked that question, I looked over and Bob Raquet was a little like, let me think about it a bit. And she's right. You can't really know if you have control when you aggregate data, which is why later today we're going to talk about graphing the data differently so you can see within the analysis what needs to be seen to move towards treatment. What I'm going to do is take out this 5-minute data point right here, and I'm going to stretch out the data into a second-by-second analysis. 5-minute session, 300 seconds. If there's a black line, it means they're in reinforcement. If there's a white line, it means the EO is presented. If the diamond is open, it means problem behavior occurred during reinforcement. If the diamond is closed, it means problem behavior happened during the EO. So let's tell the story. The learner comes in the room, there's a whole bunch of reinforcers. And this is the old way, by the way. The new way would have, this would all be one line. We'll do that later. Come in the room, there's a little reinforcement, the EO is put in place, a couple seconds pass, problem behavior happens, it's reinforced, it turns off. EO is put in place, there's a long latency, 2 problem behaviors happen before it's reinforced, turns off, EO, turns on, turns off, reinforcement, EO, turns on, turns off, that's controlling behavior. Then it's replicated. This is what we like to see when we do analyses. We look at second-by-second data. If behavior is continuing on throughout reinforcement, that is a signal that we don't understand. If behavior is happening equally in the EO and reinforcement, we don't understand. If behavior is clustering 10, 12 in a bunch, we don't understand. If behavior stays at a dangerous level, we don't understand. So by looking within session, it's giving us the information as to whether we understand behavior. It should occur with short latency eventually in the EO. As soon as it turns on, it should turn off and not be clustered. and there shouldn't be many responses during, or any in reinforcement. Please know that in the beginning, we do get clustering because the child doesn't understand yet what's happening. But by the end of the process, it should look something like this, and it does. Okay. Thank you, some of you, for your patience. I know there was a couple hands raised, and I kind of moved on. So let's go back to it. Let's get that microphone. The woman in the black and white zigzag sweater on the east side. What did I? Yeah, zigzag. Thanks. What did I say? Oh, I did. Okay. Zigzag. Yeah. Err on the side of longer.
The 30 seconds may try, so.
Yes, thank you. It's 30 seconds of a particular performance. 0 problem behavior of any sort, and 30 consecutive seconds minimum of HRE. Minimum, yes. And every time I do this collaboratively, I break that rule. Because people are like, it's been 30 seconds, we put the O, and I'm like, nah, just hang out, please. It's not because I'm a softie. I'll tell you why I like it more than 30. And I think if I meet you again in a year from now and we talk about this, it's going to be more than 30 seconds. And the reason being is I'm learning a lot about children in reinforcement, and there's a lot of good stuff going on there. When we just are available to kids, we're seeing all sorts of social referencing and social bids come out. So you know how people that do floor time, and I don't know what all the acronyms are, DIR and TEACH and all that. You know, they've been talking about some of this stuff, certainly more than we have, and what they're talking about has a lot of validity. Sometimes if we just hang out with kids and zip it, they learn. They learn through the play, and they engage in social bids, and so we're borrowing a bit of that. And that's what's happening during reinforcement. So I used to think reinforcement was like a waste of time. In fact, if I was in a one-way mirror with my team, and they were on reinforcement, I'd be like, tell me when you're going to put the O in, and I would like make a call, do some paperwork. I thought all the good stuff was where the EO was, and it is good stuff where the EO is, and it's also where the risk lives. But there's a lot of good learning, trust building, rapport building, whatever you want to call it, happening during reinforcement. And so if you want to stay a little longer in reinforcement, there's no shame in that. Please know all this 30-second stuff really came out of, it was almost like an arms race of researchers trying to get the most efficient analysis. Dr. Jessel and I played that game for a couple years. And I'm done playing the game because my priorities are not speed. My priority is fast enough, and that's about 6th. My priority is safety. So more time in reinforcement is safer. My priority is televisability. Reinforcement looks great. Put that on the news. My priority is rapport, and it looks better for rapport. So you are all those things stacked towards a little longer. Thanks. We have a question here. West side. The west side's supposed to be gritty. You guys have not acted gritty. I'm looking for a little more grit from the west side.
What are your thoughts on electronic play in the analysis, and, for example, like what happens if the electronic dies?
Good. Very good. Very good. We call those unplanned EOs. We know from the interview that when the iPad runs out, they hit themselves. We know from the interview that they can't get Wi-Fi or the YouTube channel isn't working. We understand all that, but understand your behavior analyst. If you want to control behavior, you got to control the environment. So when you go into that analysis, I strongly recommend you get that iPad juiced up before you invite the child into the analytic space, that you check the Wi-Fi. If you want to be really weird, do what the folks down at VCU just taught us last week. They get these little Verizon hotspots, and they bring them into the analysis to ensure that there's not going to be a disruption. Have a backup iPad. Again, we're mollifying right now, right? We're dancing around. We don't want any problems. That's exactly right in the first part. So we want to control those unfortunate accidents to the best we can. Understand our whole therapy is about teaching them to deal with all that. But we can't go there until we get a starting place of trust, okay? And so understand, I know we're mollifying kids in the very beginning by having backup iPads and hotspots, but that's what I strongly recommend you do. Now, unplanned EOs happen, especially when people feel compelled to do the analysis in the classroom with other kids. Other kids constantly are throwing unplanned EOs in. The kid's stimming with a koosh ball, and a kid just walks by and just takes it. It happens. unplanned EOs happen. The reason why I like, well, it's not up there anymore, this second-by-second analysis is we have a little note when an unplanned EO was put in. So we don't get confused. Why are they misbehaving in reinforcement? It's not reinforcement anymore, folks. So we have programmed EOs and we have unplanned EOs. Take note. If it's an unplanned EO, note that, because you do understand behavior when it happens when the unplanned EO came about. Did that help? Okay. Let's go with Central Park up in front. The leader of Central Park North, Hannah.
I did, you kind of addressed it just there, but with those open diamonds on the visual, is that just that it's not reinforcement, or is it, like you brought up, the unplanned EOs?
Very good. That's the beauty of the process is in interpreting that which is uncontrolled. In other words, we're going to have a talk about those open diamonds. Now, it's all about, we have to talk about it, and it'll be really obvious usually what they're from. Sometimes open diamonds are obviously an unplanned EO. Sometimes open diamonds are because it's the early part of the analysis and the child is still engaging in clusters of behavior because that's what they practice. Sometimes the open diamonds are what we call avoidant behavior. There's a lot of kids walking around with head-directed SIB that we're calling it automatic, and it's not automatic. Please know, we have never demonstrated control by automatic reinforcement. It's the default. And I would say a whole bunch of kids that I work with that I said automatic in journal articles, I wish I could go back in time because a lot of that behavior is avoidant behavior. We discovered this because we work with these kids and there's none of that behavior. We put our first EO in, we get the baby, we reinforce it, and then throughout the reinforcement interval, they're just every 40 seconds or so, there's a little whack, and they'll look at you, whack. They're pretty much putting us on notice. Don't do that thing again. I am a badass. Here's the memo. Did you get the memo that I'm a badass? Don't stand up again. It's avoidance behavior, and avoidance behavior is tricky because there's no clear antecedent. Avoidance behavior is not just eradicating the signal. Sometimes avoidance behavior, there is no signal, if you read Sidman's work. So a lot of tricky behavior out there is avoidance behavior. So when I see an open diamond, it leads me also to want to understand whether it's avoidance behavior or not. How we can understand that is stretching the reinforcement interval for some time and pay mind to it. If we do decide to go to treatment, it should abate over time as we turn it from an avoidance response into an escape response. And when it's an escape response, now it's something quite controllable and capable of being influenced. So yeah, it's a great point. If you get the open diamonds, don't get upset. Take it as an opportunity to learn. Yep. I'm sorry, yup. Miss in the green sweater with the cowl neck.
Just from a practical standpoint, when you're doing your graphing, are you going back and watching videos and doing that?
We'll talk about a lot of these logistics tomorrow, but I'm going to follow you, Lee, because these are great questions. You can use a data sheet, or you can use the app, or you can use little computer programs you might have. Non-negotiable is the person implementing the analysis does not take data for the analysis, because I need you wildly responsive to the child. So I know you think you're a badass BCBA, and you probably are, but I'm asking you badasses to stop taking data in analyses because I need you 100% available to the child. Meaning you need a partner if you're going to collect data live, and I'd like you to collect data live because I want you to make decisions based on performance. But the analyst can make decisions without data being collected once you understand the process. I video all analyses, and I recommend you video record all analyses. Video record all analyses because we often change the code in the beginning of in the middle of the analysis. Please know your behavior code is but a guess based on an interview. And I don't spend hours coming up with op-defs. I'm just like, yeah, hitting, kidding, spitting, okay, spitting, move on. Let's get the show on the road. And then the analysis, we sometimes change definitions. Oh, I didn't know. Oh, that's a precursor. No one told. Okay. And so I videotape for that reason. Most of the time, especially in research, we are going back in the videotapes and rescoring to get precision. The scoring live is just a guide to see if we're moving in the right direction. So short answer, videotape everything. Don't take data if you're implementing. You can still do this alone. All you need is a camera and yourself. However, if you have a buddy, I would strongly recommend they take the data, and then you probably still might go back and touch it up. Again, there's a lot learned in an analysis, and the implementer misses half of it because they're so busy doing multiple things. Okay?
Another logistical question. A kiddo that is terrified of going to a new place, are you doing this analysis in their home, or are you making them get acclimated to the clinic, or wherever you are?
Good. So I just want to be clear. I do my darndest not to make kids do anything anymore. So if I hear we're going to have to make him come to the clinic, I will ask, does the service provision allow us to do this in the home? I want to go where the child is. I don't want a child escalated into the process. A more typical example is I have a real hard time with waiting rooms in severe behavior clinics. Did you get the irony? Kids with severe problem behavior can't wait, yet we have parents go to a waiting room, fill out paperwork. So even that, I don't want to make them hang out in the waiting room. As soon as they arrive, we want to text, we'll meet them at the car, at the door, we go into the room, we blow their mind with all their reinforcers, we're off to the races. If the transition is going to be way too onerous, everyone agrees, it's going to require physical management and all that kind of stuff, I ask if the service allows us to go into the home. Sometimes it doesn't, okay? But if it does, go where you can get happy, relaxed, and engaged without physically managing the child. Okay, I know that's a little ideal, but that's what I would recommend. Right behind you, Shannon, this one. If you didn't hear that, how do you get parents comfortable with the process, especially the risky elements like open door policy? The hardest thing to convince parents of, to be honest, is to reinforce problem behavior and cave. The hardest thing for parents is that we don't get to see the show they see. And they feel bad, they think like we don't believe them that their child has really severe behavior. That's actually the hardest thing. I tell parents, we treat SIB having never seen the SIB. And that's okay. I teach parents that I trust you. I believe you that he engages in severe SIB. We don't need to see it starting now. I talk to parents about the logic and the rationale for why we're doing what we're doing, and if they seem uncomfortable at all, I try to draw it out of them. If I see a little movement like, Mom, what's wrong? What aren't you buying here? And I just talk through it. And a lot of times I'm talking through it, the child's in reinforcement. We're watching them. Sometimes kids stay in reinforcement for 30 minutes, not because they needed 30 minutes of HRE, because the parent was in HRE. You see what I mean? So I'm just dialoguing with them. You know, we manage the risk. If they have policies like I don't want them going in my bedroom, we draw that line. But I always tell parents, every line you draw is an unplanned EO. I don't say it that way, but that might slow down the process. Same thing in schools. Every line, oh, they can't go in the women's room. That's reasonable during the school day. Let's do it on a Saturday. Why can't they go in the women's room? Do you see what I'm saying? So I constantly challenge the restrictions. In a good interview, you want to figure out what the EOs are, figure out what the rules are that the kid breaks regularly. Those are the EOs. And so it requires some flexibility. Okay, by a show of hands, be honest. How many of you are totally okay letting a preschooler eat Play-Doh? Raise your hand. Okay, wow, all right, look at you liberals. Raise your hand if you are uncomfortable letting a child eat program. In fact, you have a policy in the preschool. Kids can't eat Play-Doh. Raise your hand. Yeah, you guys, you little conservative folks are raising a little lower, but thank you for raising it. That's a very common conversation where I talk to people and say, okay, if you bought the Play-Doh at the dollar store and it says like it's Play-Doh made in China, everything's misspelled, then yeah, let's not use that. But if it's Play-Doh, made in America, let them eat it. It's non-toxic. Kids can eat it. I'm so silly sometimes when I'm trying to convince people to get on the bus and take the risk. I just take a little Play-Doh and I eat it. Like I wouldn't ask you to do something with your child that I wouldn't do myself. And I talk about it. I'm like, yeah, the colors don't taste different, just so you know. I like it fresh. If I'm going to eat my Play-Doh, I like it fresh. I don't like the stale stuff. You understand my point, though? My point is to be downright honest with folks, telling them we have to find your child's happy, relaxed, engaged place. And every time we put a restriction on them, it's going to take us longer to figure that out.